It's almost as though it's tacit acceptance at this point. This is happening in Democrat states, in Democrat towns, with Democrat mayors, Democrat city council, and they're much more concerned, apparently, about protecting looters, criminals, vandals, arsonists, than they are protecting the people, the God-fearing, law-abiding citizens of those cities. And it's an absolute disgrace. But that will be the Democrats' America. They've made that clear in their silence.
Will President Trump stop the violence in the street? I mean, we all know he's pro-law enforcement, he's pro-military, and you can't get a Democrat to denounce Antifa or violence. You can't get him to do that. But the question, it begs the question, well, what are we waiting for? Why doesn't he just go in and stop it?
The reality is this. I mean, we believe in states' rights. He needs to get that request. I mean, there's even laws to that effect. So he's offered it up to those governors, but they have to be the one to pull the trigger. They have to make that request or accept the assistance. He has them there. He's been waiting to do it. They have to accept, or you end up in a big legal mess about states' rights versus federal rights, and it's a problem. Donald Trump has made that asset available to them. It is for them to choose to use, and they seem very inclined to just let these things go. It's not just Portland anymore. It's Chicago, New York, big cities. I mean, Kedosh it's a suburb. It's literally a suburb. This stuff is coming to a town near you because of Democrat indifference and a desire to appease radicals and vandals at this point.
Let's talk about the book. It's called Liberal Privilege. You know, I've heard white privilege. What do you mean liberal privilege?
We hear a lot about that. We hear a lot about white privilege and every other privilege imaginable. What we don't hear about is liberal privilege. You know, the one good thing that to me that came out of the quarantine time was I had a few months at home where I wasn't able to go to work, church, school, couldn't do anything. I was stuck at home. And I was able to look at Joe Biden's 50-year, half a century, Eric, swamp career. And I said, man, it's amazing what's out there about this guy, about his votes, about terrible decisions, about Obama's Secretary of Defense literally saying that Joe Biden's been on the wrong side of every decision for his entire career, for half a century. I mean, that's impressive. And yet, no one in the media talks about it. They don't talk about Hunter Biden. They don't talk about Joe's brother and the multi-million-dollar contracts, $1 billion contracts to build housing in Iraq, though he's never built a home. Minor details. The sister, the Biden family living off of Joe's taxpayer-funded office for decades. They don't talk about his decisions, his voting record, whether it be on race, whether it be building up China, pushing for permanent trade status for them in the World Trade Organization, allowing China to grow from a country that was the size economically of the Netherlands when Joe started shilling for them, to the country that it is today that's manipulating the world, lying to the world, spreading this disease. And Joe says they're not a threat. It shows 50 years of incompetence that the media refuses to look at. And so I said, if I have this time, I'm going to take it, I'm going to get out there, and I'm going to do the media's job for them because they've abdicated their responsibility to be fair dealers in exchange for being activists for the far left.
I guess maybe we could even call it liberal hypocrisy, and you've named it liberal privilege. I get it. I can see that. In the book you write, Biden, I guess you say he could be more corrupt than even Hillary. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm saying, listen, what do you think, Eric, would happen if Donald Trump Jr. took $1.5 billion from the Chinese government? Think about that. I mean, you're from a financial background. What's a typical fund? 2 and 20? 2% management fee? Yeah. What's 2% of $1.5 billion annually?
I will tell you something else.
It's
$30
million a year.
Donald Trump Jr.
If I took $1.5,
you're not going to get a penny on Wall Street unless you have some sort of background in energy and or China trade. And Hunter had no background in energy nor China trade and somehow amassed a massive payday.
Well, and anyone, and I actually go on the record in the book with, one of the biggest, guys on Wall Street, one of the titans, who, told me, it took him, almost a decade to get into China. This is a guy that sold multi-billion-dollar companies for a 30-year track record. He goes, hey, those guys are smart. Those funds know exactly what they're looking for. They invest in the individual. They do countless due diligence. They don't give it to, cokehead Hunter with no track record, no nothing, no ability, thrown out of the military after 2 weeks, testing positive for drugs, hiding from child support. They don't give $1.5 billion or $30 million a year in fees to a guy like that. He goes, unless they're buying them. And he goes, the problem that you have is that he said it, he goes, They've invested with me, and me even saying this on the record, and he is on the record, they'll pull, money out of their funds because they'll manipulate it, just like they were trying to manipulate the Bidens and the Biden family. If I took $1.5 from the Chinese government, it would be a global scandal. $1.5 billion or $30 million a year in fees, depending on how you look at it. I say he doesn't get the profit component because he's probably as smart as Joe Biden, so there's probably no profits. But $30 million a year to do nothing with no experience is pretty solid. Joe's not going to be tough on China, and everyone knows it.
All right, we're going to leave it there. By the way, you shouldn't hold back next time because
Eric, I've been called many things. They usually say I'm too calm, so I'm trying to amp it up a little bit. But
listen,
but
you
no,
got the right audience. You got the right audience. This is America.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's 191 stations across the country to see this. It's the book is called Liberal Privilege, and it's just out. Go out and grab a copy of that. Donald Trump Jr. Thank you very much for your time.